Item number 8.
Item 8, proclamation recognizing Pearl Harbor Day. Stan VanderWerf, Commissioner, Board of County Commissioners.
Commissioner VanderWerf.
Thank you. I think we have a few representatives that will accept this proclamation. If you could come on down, appreciate it very much. And as you're coming down, I'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to make a motion to approve this proclamation recognizing Pearl Harbor Day. Whereas on December 7, 1941, the Empire of Japan suddenly and viciously attacked the Pacific Fleet of the United States of America while at Pearl Harbor in the United States territory of Hawaii. And whereas this surprise attack resulted in more than 2,350 deaths, 1,178 wounded, and brought devastation to the United States Pacific Fleet and its air forces. And whereas December 7, 1941, a date that forever lives in infamy, brought the United States out of isolation and into the Second World War to support the Allies who had been fighting a bitter war in Europe for the 2 previous years. And whereas this sneak attack kindled the righteous fury of the United States of America, thus awakening the sleeping giant to become the arsenal of democracy for the cause of freedom. And whereas through the untold measure paid in precious lives, the United States ultimately won the titanic struggle and achieved the final victory. And whereas the number of military service personnel who survived the vicious attack on that day is quickly declining as years pass. Now, therefore, the Board of El Paso County Commissioners hereby recognizes December 7, 2019 as Pearl Harbor Day in El Paso County, Colorado, and urges all citizens to set aside time on that day to reflect on the bitter lessons learned, to honor the profound bravery of all those who served, and to pay special tribute to those who gave their last full measure of devotion on that fateful day 78 years ago. Done this 5th day of December 2019 at Colorado Springs, Colorado. The Board of County Commissioners of El Paso County, Colorado, signed Mark Waller, Chair, Longinos Gonzalez, Jr., Vice Chair, Stan VanderWerf, Holly Williams, and Cammie Bremer, members, and signed and attested to by Chuck Browerman, County Clerk and Recorder. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, gentlemen, if you would like to say a few words, we'd appreciate that very much before we take a vote.
Good morning, Chairman Waller, Commissioners. Marshall Boswell, County Veteran Service Officer. I was looking at some of the history of Pearl Harbor last night, and I remember when I was a 17-year-old young man just graduating high school, and I went to Pearl Harbor. And just the profound impact that it had on me, even as a young man, looking at that ship under the water, the oil seeping up, knowing that there was people inside that ship still, is something that I've never, ever forgotten. And the sacrifice that they made on that day, the fight that they had. So thank you for continuing to honor Pearl Harbor. And with this proclamation every year is greatly appreciated for myself as well as the veterans of our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak?
I'm Art Cyphers. I'm with the Navy League. And thank you for recognizing this by proclamation. Tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, we will have a ceremony at the Pioneers Museum in the upper room of the courtroom. And the public is invited, and we will remember those who died on that day and those who survived and fought to the end of the war. I have one other comment while I'm standing here. We have 2 bridges, one named for Don Stratton, one named for Jim Downing, and none of the signage for either of those things says anything about USS Arizona or USS West Virginia or Pearl Harbor. It just says Lieutenant Downing and so forth. And perhaps that could be corrected. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Ted Jemzinski, and I appreciate the fact that the Pearl Harbor Day is being commemorated. I was a little too young for that, but 52 saw me in Korea, and I spent 30 years in the Marine Corps. And I thank you kindly for the opportunity to voice my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on the Pearl Harbor resolution? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it up here I'll close the public comment phase of this discussion. I'll bring it up here for some talk. Commissioner Williams.
I just wanted today to comment on moments in history that we are all just very proud of. And I remember the day the Challenger space shuttle blew up, and the day the Discovery space shuttle, I think it was the Discovery one, that disintegrated on reentry. My sister remembers Apollo 13, and then the lunar landing. But my mom, and I was always proud to say my mom remembers the day she heard President Roosevelt on the radio, driving home from church after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And so I had two uncles who served at who served in World War II, and thankfully they were able to come home and live a very productive life, and whereas other thousands gave their life during that time for our freedom. So thank you for our military and their service, and for saving the world, really, after when we entered into World War II. We appreciate it very much.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate everybody coming out. The veterans, you have our great support and thanks. As we remember this, it's this day of infamy. And, you've got 3 veterans here on this board. The previous board had 4 members. We've got 5 bases here that El Paso County is host to. And so this is a community that really appreciates its veterans and remembers these kind of days. And so it's just something that we just want to give thanks to all those who perished and all those who fought on afterwards in making sure that we won that war and making sure that we were able to spread freedom for everybody. Thank you, and God bless.
Yeah, I'm happy that we do this every single year as well. I think it's something that's so crucially important to remember and to think about, because it did spark our involvement, or our declaration of war in World War II. But the thing I like to think about, and I've been to the memorial a couple of times, and it is an incredibly reverent spot. But the thing that I like to think about mostly when I'm there is not just the folks that lost their lives there, but everybody that stood up and answered the call to action after it happened. I'm not sure that we live in a world today where that would happen as readily as it did then. And I wish that more people had the opportunity to visit that memorial and understand or hear discussions today about these sorts of resolutions that are happening not just in El Paso County here, but across our state and across our nation. I wish that more people would see and hear and understand these things and understand what it means to have your nation put in peril and jeopardy that way, but so much more than that, so much more importantly, what it means to answer the call once that happens. I'm just, again, not convinced that we're in a circumstance in our world today where people would rise up the way they did after the attack on Pearl Harbor happened and go to war and cross the ocean and fight hard in the Pacific theater and fight hard in the European theater to make sure that not just democracy was protected in the United States of America, but to promote democracy and freedom across the entire globe. There's a reason that we call that generation the greatest generation, and I think it is a title that is not overused, and it's something that is, I believe, incredibly honorable, but most importantly, it's just and right, and they are. They've earned that that nomenclature to be the greatest generation. Commissioner VanderWerf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I, too, would like to honor all of those that have both committed the ultimate sacrifice, but also those that have continued to serve for the defense of the country. I think Commissioner Waller's points are well taken. There are so many millions of us that have signed up and served and was ready to make that sacrifice if it was needed. It just wasn't their time, but they need to be honored as well. I am particularly grateful that we've had two people that I know of, at least, there's probably several more, Jim Downing and Don Stratton, that both served at Pearl Harbor during the attack, that are residents here. We all know, bless him, Jim Downing has passed away, and Don Stratton is 97. But Don is still here. He and his wife Velma still live in the community. And it is amazing to me the sacrifices that Don Stratton made. He served on the Arizona during the Pearl Harbor attack, was burned on over 60% of his body, spent a year in a convalescence hospital, was medically discharged by the Navy, asked the Navy to re-enlist. The Navy said, if you can go through boot camp again, we will let you do that. Don Stratton went through boot camp a second time, then was re-enlisted in the Navy and continued to serve the last 2 years of World War II honorably, and served in several of the most incredible naval battles in history, including Leyte Gulf and others. This is the kind of dedication that we have. This is the kind of love that citizens have for our country. It is truly amazing, and the sacrifices are just incredible. I think it's an honor to recognize Pearl Harbor Day every year in El Paso County. We do this with the love for the people that have done that service, and I look forward to being at the ceremony tomorrow. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being here, and that is my comments.
All right, if there's nothing else, I'll call the roll. Commissioner VanderWerf?
Aye.
Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. That passes unanimously with Commissioner Brimmer excused. We will stand in recess for a picture.